we need to build mindsets in people and think about mindsets because we want young people who thrive on challenge. We want young people who are prepared to learn from mistakes. We want young people who want to try lots of strategies before they give in and learn perseverance. So what are some of the things that we might think about in the classroom? The first one is, I think, giving them information, giving them knowledge about how we learn and how our brain works. That actually the thing that makes a difference is not talent or ability, but is practice. It's actually working at something and doing it. And the research would say to get to the top in anything, doesn't matter whether it's sport or science or music or maths, to get the top in absolutely anything, the number one thing, determined practice. And that means not just repeating the same practice, but trying to push yourself, just trying to get a little bit better in every field that there is. And that would hold not just in terms of academic progress, but social progress. To learn to be slightly more patient, to learn to wait for things, to learn to be able to set goals, all of those things. So helping children understand how the brain works, that literally learning is and practice is building your brain, it's growing it. That comes as a real shock to some people I've worked with, some adolescents who you say, well, I can actually work harder and get better. They don't know that. They have a very fixed thing about, I'm just not clever, or I just can't do this. What's the point in trying? So that's an important one for them. I think another thing we should do is introduce realistic role models. So take heroes of the young people and children. Take people that they see, pop stars and sports stars and different things, because they just see the finished product. They see them and then we get them described as genius or prodigy or gifted. And what they don't see are the hours of practice and the failure and the struggle to get there. We don't introduce them to those stories. We just put it down as they're exceptionally talented. So getting them to explore that is really interesting. I was working with a group recently who were particularly interested in football, and they were astounded to find out things like Lionel Messi was dropped from his team for being too small. He was kicked out of his school team because he wasn't good enough. The greatest footballer in the world, you know? It's interesting for them to hear those stories. I think another thing we have to think about really in detail is the feedback that we give young people and children. We have a tendency to want to make them feel good with our feedback. So we say things like, you're really clever, you're great, you did that really fast, you're really talented, aren't you, fantastic. And actually, although that's making them feel good, it's building a fixed mindset mentality, which is if I do something well and get called clever, I just don't want to risk doing something where I'm not going to get called that. So we should give lots of feedback that's positive, but it should be around effort. It should be around, well done for using that strategy. It should be about seeking support. It should be about perseverance. It should be about learning from mistakes. It should be about all those things that are under a child's control and they can learn to do better. Because I think if we don't do that, we run the risk of actually creating the thing that we don't want, which is children who are not going to take on challenge and not going to persevere. And the other thing that we need to do to build growth mindsets is be careful with the kind of goals that we set in the classroom. We tend to have an educational system that sets what are called performance goals. And performance goals are what grade you get or how fast you do something. And what that leads to is people comparing themselves to other people all the time. And unless they can be the best, they don't want to take part. So if I can't be better than the other people, then I don't want to do it. And that's a fixed mindset kind of view. I want to be the best. Whereas actually what we want for young people is for them to do their best. So we should be setting what are called learning goals or mastery goals. And mastery goals are about, am I improving? Am I better than I was last week? Am I getting better at my maths? Or am I getting better at sharing? Am I getting better at being a friend? Rather than, am I the best in the class at doing that? That becomes really important. And I think although this is a very popular concept at the moment, one of the things that goes wrong is we spend a little bit too much time trying to do it individually with young people, whereas really to create the right mindset, it's about creating an environment that does that. It's about creating an environment in the classroom and in the schools where effort is valued, where mistakes don't need to be being judged, but are seen as a way of learning, where we create a culture where it's safe to have a go, where people get a chance to acknowledge and notice their progress that they're making. And we're not basing it on one big success at the end, but actually hundreds and hundreds of small successes. That's the thing that makes a difference. If we want young people to write a book, start with a page, rather than having this big thing at the end that's this. They don't think is achievable. I'm never going to be able to do that, so how do I do that? And in order to do that, the thing about growth mindsets that struck me working around it, with myself and in schools, is that it's really easy to talk about. And it's quite easy to say they need to do this. What really needs to happen in schools is that teachers themselves need to think about their own mindset. And they need to think, when they're working with children, do I see their behaviour or their learning as some trait, some personality, some fixed thing? Or do I see their potential? And do I reflect on what can I do differently? How can I change my practice in order to help them reach that potential? Because I think when you do that, that's what leads to a growth mindset. That's self-reflection and teachers doing that. And in the school we're in today, Kilgarth, one of their strap lines, which I think kind of feeds into this directly, is always growing, always learning. And that's about the staff taking on a growth mindset to look at how do we influence in the most positive way with the children.